In this June 29th episode of 3 Etobicoke, we're going to go through a 3-bedroom detached house in the Long Branch neighborhood of South Etobicoke, available for under $900,000. But what's wrong with it? A commercial property with an apartment up top, because perhaps some of you, especially first-time homebuyers, have wondered about buying one of these properties which look like fantastic value but have different rules from buying a residential home and a newly built 3-bedroom, 3-story detached house in a recently developed section of Glen Agar in central Etobicoke that has some really nice design features for an attractive price. If this is your first time watching, my name is Jonathan Lee and I'm an Etobicoke real estate specialist. 3 Etobicoke is a video series that I run weekly where I analyze 3 different Etobicoke properties at 3 different price points. If you're interested in learning more about any of these properties or you would like to chat about real estate, you can schedule a call with me through Calendly by clicking on the link below in the description. Now let's look at that first home. So at the low end price point, I have 117 24th Street listed by Remax West Realty, and it's listed at $898,000, taking offers anytime. This house was previously listed earlier in June at $850,000 with an offer date, and it didn't take. It's an older wood frame 3-bedroom detached house built in the 1920s on a 25 by 130 foot lot, which is a decent size, and is located north of Lakeshore across the street from these Minto stacked condo townhouses on Carnation Avenue. And I'll just show you here on the map. So right here is the house, and just directly across the street are these newer stacked condo townhouses right here. Lately, the upper levels of these stacked condo townhouses, which are 2 beds plus den or so, they go for between $900,000 to $1 million. So the idea of getting a full detached house right across the street with no maintenance fee at $900,000 and all the land that is on the property honestly kind of seems like a steal. The property has a mutual drive or a shared driveway right here, which is an important feature to note, and I'll explain that in a little bit. And the drive looks like it belongs a little bit more to 117 than it does to 115. Also, an important factor is probably like just kind of eyeballing the picture. It looks like it's about 2/3 117, maybe 1/3 115. Also to note, it's close to the Lakeshore West GO line train tracks right here. You can kind of see them, which will affect its attractiveness to prospective buyers. This is a pretty busy rail line, a train about once every 30 minutes or so, and more frequently than that during rush hour periods. But these condo townhouses tend to do pretty well, so I don't think it's going to affect the buyer pool too significantly, but still, that might be a deal breaker for some buyers. Alrighty, let's quickly go through the photos. So the house looks decent. The photos are a bit airbrush, which I'm not sure if you can kind of tell, but the home was certainly updated probably about 10-15 years back. It's got the darker wood cabinets, the darker flooring, which was really in vogue and in trend. Upstairs, this looks like it would have been the primary bedroom, bathroom, and then your 2 other bedrooms here. And the backyard, kind of nothing really to write home about. So personally, having lived in an old 1920s wood frame home in South Etobicoke myself, I know these photos show one thing, but going through the property is something else. So let's go through the submersive virtual tour ourselves and see what we can find. So here we are in the front foyer. This was an extension to the original house. The original house started here. So as we kind of enter the home, it does look a little bit more worn than the pictures on the listing allude to. Kitchen's a good size, and here to the rear you have also another additional extension, so you can probably tell. That is most likely the stairs down to the basement, which we cannot enter through the virtual tour. The property looks like it was probably tenanted for a while, many years most likely. One thing that can happen in an older 100-plus-year-old home is that you actually get floor joists that will start to dip a little bit, and the floor being slightly unlevel. Another thing to note is there are no photos of the basement, and a look at the exterior of the home, if we kind of zoom into the front pictures here, it doesn't look like the foundation area is in the best shape. It looks like there's some spalling for sure, and it looks pretty worn. I haven't been to the house myself, but I'm going to guess the property has some minor to potentially a bit more than minor water issues in the basement. It's possible it's not a huge issue. You know, there may just be some excess humidity in the house, and that's about it. But if any of this water is affecting the sill plates or the joists or breaking into the exterior sheathing through the siding, it's possible there's some damage that's not visible to the eyes. Still, for anyone that watched my previous video analyzing the property on Martin Grove on that huge monster of a lot, I mentioned that a 25 by 110 foot lot goes for between 700,000 and 900,000 just in terms of vacant land value, depending on the features and where it's located. And this property being listed at under $900,000, you're almost buying this property for land value and getting the house that sits on top of it pretty much for free, regardless of what condition it's in. And that seems like a fantastic deal, except for when you look at the mutual drive. So unless you dissolve the easement agreement with the next door neighbor, which is extremely unlikely to happen, you'd require to buy them out or to either buy the property and dissolve the agreement. It would be an agreement with the same property owner. You can't build over this section of the mutual drive, which will potentially limit what you can do on this land. So rather than maybe being a $900,000 lot, it's maybe an $800,000 or $750,000 lot. Does that make the house overpriced? Not at all, in my opinion. Buying a 3-bedroom, 2-story detached house in Etobicoke for well under $1 million is rarely heard of these days, but this house won't be perfect. If it doesn't require work now, it will eventually require work, and it won't be, and I'd say it won't be for anyone that's looking for a problem-free property. Still, I think it's a decent buy. Just got to be willing to buy it with your eyes open. If you're a handy person or would like to learn to become a handy person, I think that this house could be a great property for you. At the mid-level price point, I have 1258 the Queensway, which is a commercial property with an upstairs apartment listed at 1.1 million. It's listed by Royal LePage Realty Services, and it's located at Queensway and Kipling. This area of Queensway, I'd say between Kipling and Park Lawn or so, including this area of Sherwood Gardens and further up here along Dundas and Kipling area. This whole section is going to quickly become the downtown area of Etobicoke. So this is a standard store with apartment up top. The upstairs is configured into 3 different apartments. It was originally built as one, but I'll quickly take you through the limited photos just so that you can get an idea of the property. So I believe it's this one right here. There's a property from the rear, the parking lot through the back, the main store area, and then the upstairs units. And then down below as well. So I included this property because it showed up on my residential list. I'm finding more commercial properties are showing up on the residential list so that they get more eyeballs on the listing, interestingly enough, because a lot of these commercial properties aren't really moving. But I also included this property because when I was younger, shopping for my first home in Toronto, many years before I became a realtor, I at one point had considered, instead of buying a single family home or so, just buying a commercial property and living in the upstairs. And this was, of course, before I had a family. I was single and I didn't need much space for myself, and price-wise, commercial properties appeared to offer pretty good value. I liked the idea of being able to rent out the main floor, collect some rent while I was single, and then later on, potentially, 20, 30 years down the line or something like that, maybe using that space for myself and opening up a shop or a business or something like that. I'd always kind of had that entrepreneurial drive. But after becoming a realtor and dabbling a bit in commercial real estate, it's not a sector of the real estate industry that I do a lot of work in, but I have learned a little bit with having worked with some commercial clients. I learned buying commercial is much different than buying residential. So if any of you guys watching, you get a work cell phone through your company and you look at the plan, it's a lot more money than regular consumer plans that you probably have with your own personal cell phone. So you're paying more money for less service. Commercial mortgages, commercial insurance, commercial bankings to the same degree, they're all similar. You're charged more for less product or less service, and there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. If you're buying a commercial property, unless you're buying in cash, you got to purchase through a commercial mortgage. You will need a minimum of 35% down payment for a commercial mortgage instead of a 20% down payment for a residential mortgage over $1 million. And the rates are all higher for commercial mortgages. Prime plus 2% plus 3% instead of, with a residential prime minus 1% or so. And commercial mortgages are almost exclusively provided by the big banks, unless you go through a private mortgage, but that would be exponentially more expensive. So really you're comparing, say, 5 different commercial mortgage packages instead of 25 different residential mortgage packages, meaning there's just a lot less competition and a lot less selection for your mortgage products. So that's part 1. Part two is that the banks are also a lot more stipulative about the properties that they will mortgage. They're going to look up the history in a lot more detail, sometimes going back 10, 15, 20 years in the property. And they'll sometimes require environmental assessments, soil assessments. They'll be looking up details of the businesses surrounding the immediate property. And getting an approval for a mortgage can easily take 4 weeks. Forget waiving a financing condition. You waive a financing condition with multiple offer conditions, you can easily be screwed. And the big reason that banks do this, making things so difficult, is because they want to make sure that they can get their money back on their investment should an owner ever default on a mortgage. In commercial real estate, at least in Toronto, a lot of the value in the property is land value and what you can do with that land. If that land is ever contaminated, that makes repurposing the lot difficult. The banks won't want to touch it. And I find it very interesting that the same amount of due diligence is not done by the banks for residential properties, but it is what it is. Commercial properties are a lot harder to finance. Residential properties are a lot easier to finance. So that's 1258 the Queensway. This isn't a property that most people will be interested in, but perhaps you've thought about buying a commercial property, and these are some things that you now know. Okay, and at the high price point, we have 16 Kipling Grove Court, listed by Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, and is listed at $1,848,000, taking offers anytime. So this property is part of a property redevelopment that happened in about 2019, 2020 on an old school lot in the Glen Agar neighborhood. So I'll show you what that looked like in Google Maps. So this Kipling Grove Court, it's right around Martin Grove and Rathburn-ish area. And if we go right here on Glen Agar, you can see all these new homes here, really modern style, really modern design. And if we go back to about 2015 or so, you can see that this was an old school lot. They probably shut down the school some years back, and it looks like it was sold to a Montessori school and potentially resold again. So they turned that old school into about 50 new built 3-story, 3 to 5 bedroom homes on 30-foot frontage lots. This home in particular, 16 Kipling Grove Court, it's a 3-bedroom home and it's graded at 3,250 square feet above ground with an unfinished basement. These homes were built by Minto. So let's have a look through the pictures. So from the front, the home doesn't actually look like a 3-story, but the front door here, you can tell that it's raised. There's probably about 8 steps or so that you have to climb to get to the front door. And then once inside, you've entered the home. You have this foyer here and you have to climb an additional 9 steps or so. So this actually gets you into the second story of the home, which is the main level. So when you're at this second level, you're actually standing on top of the garage. I do like having this sort of sunken foyer at a separate level. It gives an extra bit of privacy. If you ever have someone come to the door, like a canvasser or something like that. But you do lose a bit of that square footage on the second floor to the stairs. So just once again, looking at it from the front, by the time you climb up to the second story, you are on top of the garage here. And that's your main floor. So the home has a lot of large windows, which I think is great. And the finishes that were used were a bit understated, but were very neutral, which I like. I do like that they have windows not only at just like the front and rear of the home, but towards the sides as well. But here on the sides of the house as well. This is a less common design on newer homes. Here you are in the upper level primary bedroom and the primary bathroom. Second bedroom on the upper level. Third bedroom that we just saw. And here's the shared bathroom. And here we are at the lower level, which is not the basement. It will be a bit smaller as the garage space will take up part of the space that is on that ground level. But there is a nice walkout here towards the back. And there's no pictures of the lower level, but let's have a quick look at the floor plan so that you can see it's the same as the lower level footprint here. That would be the garage, and then this would be the basement. This is an interesting home because I would most closely compare it to a newer skinny home, which are more predominant in South Etobicoke, where lot splits happen. And generally those newer build 2 stories are on 25-foot lots, 25 by 110, 120-foot lots, and they sell for around $2 million. But This home not being in that area, understandably buyers won't be looking for a home of this style in Glen Agar, and being listed at 1.85 million, I think it's really good value. I also think it's got some really nice features, the foyer, the windows, and the walkout. And I think this thing will get scooped up by a buyer that sees the value, and it won't be on the market for too long because it's hard to find a newer build in the last 5 years or so detached home for under $2 million, but this one is available. Part of me knows that they priced this thing to sell, but as well, when I do look at the finishes of the home, there's nothing particularly ultra luxurious about it. So I do in some sense feel that it's priced right, but I also wonder whether they could have squeezed an extra 50 to 100 grand out of the property. But if the seller's motivated to sell, maybe this is the right strategy for now. That wraps up this week's episode. Again, if you're interested in learning more about any of these homes or you would like to chat about real estate, you can schedule a call with me through the Calendly link below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.